If you play Chopin, I'll marry you minus the janitor's response, silenced the CEO. The Steinway grand piano sat in the center of the Harrington Tower penthouse lobby, like a black diamond minus polished proud and untouchable. Everyone who worked on the 47th floor knew two things. The piano belonged to Victoria Harrington, CEO of Harrington Global Enterprises, and nobody touched it. Not the maids, not the executives, not even the board members who flew in from London and Tokyo, wearing watches that cost more than most people's cars. Nobody touched the piano. Except Marcus Webb didn't know that yet. Marcus had been hired 3 weeks ago minus a last-minute replacement janitor, after the regular cleaning crew's van broke down on the highway. The staffing agency had sent him on short notice, and nobody had bothered to give him the full orientation. He was just supposed to mop, polish, and disappear before 8 a.m. when Miss Harrington arrived. He was quiet, reliable. He kept his head down, wore his tan work overalls, and did his job without complaint. What nobody knew, minus what nobody had ever asked, minus was where Marcus Webb came from before the overalls. It was a Tuesday morning, 7:43 a.m., when it happened. Marcus had finished polishing the marble floors in the east wing. The lobby was empty, golden morning light pouring through the arched floor-to-ceiling windows, painting everything in honey and amber. The city skyline glittered 47 floors below, silent and stunning. He walked past the piano on his way to return the cleaning cart, and then he stopped. He didn't know why. He never could explain it later. Maybe it was the light. Maybe it was the silence. Maybe it was the way the piano seemed to breathe in the stillness of that enormous room. Waiting for something, he set down his polishing cloth, pulled out the bench, Saturday down. His fingers found the keys the way old friends find each other minus naturally, without ceremony. And then Marcus Webb began to play Frédéric Chopin's Nocturne in E-flat major. 9, no 2. The first notes rose into the air like smoke minus soft, searching, heartbreakingly tender. His left hand carried the rhythm like a slow tide, while his right hand wove a melody so delicate it seemed afraid to exist. The music curled around the marble columns, drifted through the tall windows, wrapped itself around the chandelier crystals, and made them tremble. He closed his eyes. He was not in Harrington Tower anymore. He was 22 years old, on stage at the Juilliard School recital hall, playing for a crowd of 500 people who had risen to their feet before the last note had even finished fading. He was 25, performing at Carnegie Hall, the conductor of the New York Philharmonic watching from the wings, with something like awe on his weathered face. He was 28, in a recording studio in Vienna, headphones, on tears running silently down his face as he played the piece. His mother had taught him on a second-hand upright piano in their 2-room apartment in Cleveland. He played all of it into that morning. Every ghost, every memory, every year in between. Victoria Harrington arrived at 7:51, 9 minutes earlier than usual because she had a board call at 8. She stepped off the private elevator, phone already in hand, heels clicking against the marble, mind already sorting through the morning's agenda, and stopped. Her phone dropped to her side. She stood in the doorway of her own lobby and listened to a man in work overalls play Chopin on her dollar. 180,000 Steinway with the kind of mastery that made her chest ache. She didn't announce herself. She didn't move. She stood completely still for 4 full minutes. Minus a woman who had not stood still voluntarily in 15 years minus, and she listened. When the final note dissolved into silence, Marcus sat for a moment with his eyes still closed, fingers resting lightly on the keys. Then he opened his eyes, reached for his polishing cloth, and stood up to leave. Wait. He turned. Victoria Harrington stood 10 feet away in an emerald green dress, gold earrings catching the morning light, one hand on her hip and one finger pointed directly at him, minus not an accusation, but in something closer to disbelief. She walked toward him slowly, heels echoing, eyes fixed on his face, with an intensity that made most grown men take a step backward. Marcus Webb did not take a step backward. "You play Chopin," she said. It wasn't a question. It wasn't an accusation. It was the voice of a woman recalibrating everything she thought she understood about the morning. "Yes, ma'am," Marcus said simply. Victoria looked at him really looked at him for the first time. The overalls, the polishing cloth folded neatly in his hand, the calm in his eyes that had no business being there. The posture of a man completely unbothered by her gaze. She tilted her head. "Play Ballade, no. 1, she said. "In G minor." Marcus raised an eyebrow. "That is a test." "Everything is a test," Victoria said. A pause stretched between them. Around them, the city hummed 47 floors below. "And if I play it?" Marcus asked quietly. Victoria Harrington, CEO of a Fortune 500 company. Woman who had been on the cover of Forbes 3 times. Who had negotiated billion-dollar acquisitions without blinking. Said the most impulsive thing she had said in a decade. "If you play Chopin's Ballade, no." 1, the way you just played that nocturne," she said, with complete composure. "I'll marry you." She meant it as a challenge. She meant it as wit. She meant it the way powerful people make outrageous statements. As punctuation, not promise. Marcus Webb looked at her for a long moment. And then he sat back down. He played the Ballade in G minor. All of it. 8 minutes and 47 seconds of music that Chopin wrote as a young man in exile. Homesick for a Poland he would never see again. Pouring longing and rage and beauty into notes that had survived nearly 2 centuries. And still minus had the power to rearrange the air in a room. Marcus played it from memory. Without sheet music, without hesitation. He played the quiet opening that sounds like a question. He played the soaring middle section that sounds like an answer you weren't ready for. He played the devastating coda, minus the part where the music stops asking and starts demanding, with both hands crashing across the keys like a storm breaking. The sound filling every corner of that vast golden room and bouncing off the marble and rising through the chandeliers and pouring out the tall windows into the morning sky above the city. When it ended, the silence was absolute. Victoria had not moved from where she stood. Her phone was still in her hand, dark screen untouched. Her board call had started 4 minutes ago. She didn't care. Her eyes were bright, her jaw was tight. She looked like a woman, fighting with herself. Marcus stood up, tucked the bench back under the piano, and picked up his polishing cloth from the floor where he had set it. "Marcus Webb," he said, extending his hand. "Former principal pianist with the New York Philharmonic. Former faculty at Juilliard. Currently as you can see, in between chapters." Victoria shook his hand. Her grip was firm. Her voice, when it came, was carefully controlled. "Victoria Harrington." "I know who you are," Marcus said. "You have a portrait on the wall downstairs." A beat of silence. Then, to her own complete surprise, Victoria Harrington laughed. It was a real laugh, not the polished professional smile she wore in boardrooms, but an actual, unguarded laugh that softened every sharp angle of her face and made her look, briefly, like someone who had once been just a person. "Why are you cleaning floors?" she asked, the laughter still warm in her voice. Marcus was quiet for a moment. "Because a few years ago, I made a mistake," he said. "A bad investment, a worse decision, lost everything I'd built over 15 years in one season." He looked out at the skyline. "I could have given up. A lot of people expected me to." He looked back at her. "I decided I'd rather start over from the floor than stay down on it." The room was very quiet. "That is the most dignified thing I've heard anyone say in this building," Victoria said softly. "And I've heard a lot of speeches." She didn't fire him. She didn't immediately offer him some grand gesture. No instant promotion, no dramatic rescue, no fairy tale reversal. Victoria Harrington had not built an empire on impulse. But she did walk to her office, close the door, cancel her board call for the first time in 11 years, and sit alone for a long moment, thinking. Then she picked up her phone and called her director of events. "The Harrington Foundation Gala," she said. "The piano performance slot. I want a new pianist." 3 months later, Marcus Webb walked onto the stage at the Harrington Foundation annual gala, minus the most prestigious charity event in the city, attended by 500 of the wealthiest and most influential people in the country, minus in a black tuxedo that fit like it had been made for him, which it had. The room didn't know who he was yet. To most of them, he was simply the pianist minus a detail on the evening's program. A line between the dinner and the speeches. He sat down at the Steinway on the stage, minus a different Steinway, though it whispered the same language minus, and he placed his hands on the keys. He played Chopin's Nocturne in E-flat major, the same piece, the one that had started everything. By the second page, the room had gone completely still. By the fourth, 2 women in the third row were crying without knowing why. By the end, every person in that ballroom, minus CEOs, senators, celebrities, philanthropists, minus was on their feet. Marcus stood and bowed, and when he looked up, he found Victoria Harrington in the front row, watching him with a look that was not complicated at all. It was simply proud. In the weeks that followed, music journalists rediscovered him. The New York Times ran a piece titled, "The Return of Marcus Webb." The Philharmonic called. Juilliard called. A recording label in London called. He took a meeting with all of them. He said yes to some. He said no to others. He built the second chapter of his career on his own terms, minus slowly, carefully, with the patience of a man who had learned what losing everything actually costs. And Victoria. She came to every performance. She never repeated her impulsive declaration in the lobby, minus the "I'll marry you" that had slipped out of her in a moment of genuine astonishment. But she didn't have to. Some things don't need to be repeated to be true. They just need time to become real. What people noticed first was that she laughed more. Her assistant noticed. Her board noticed. Her brother, who had been worrying about her for years, called her one Sunday and said, "You sound different. I had a Tuesday morning that changed my perspective," she told him. On a quiet Thursday evening, 14 months after that morning in the lobby, Victoria Harrington sat on the bench beside Marcus Webb at the Steinway in her penthouse, minus the same piano, the same room, the same golden light. He was teaching her the opening bars of the Nocturne. Her fingers moved slowly, hesitantly, finding the notes one at a time. "You are rushing the left hand," he said gently. "I rush everything," she said. "I know," he said. "We're working on it." She turned to look at him. He was already looking at her. Outside, 47 floors below, the city moved and hummed and hustled in every direction. Up here for a moment, time was still. "You never held me to it," she said quietly. "What I said, that morning." Marcus smiled minus a real smile. Slow and certain and completely calm. "I wasn't worried," he said. "Good things happen when you give them the right amount of time." Cal. Victoria looked at the piano keys, at his hands resting beside hers on the ivory, at the city beyond the window, glittering and enormous and full of second chances. "Play it again," she said softly. "From the beginning." He placed his hands on the keys, and the music began. Some people fall from grace and call it the end. Marcus Webb fell from grace and called it the intermission. The second act was even more beautiful than the first.